This is GARIS Essays, that is 2-3 page opinion pieces on topics such as species dominance, the global state, politics, femtotech, religion, society and education. Written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. This is essay number 21, entitled Galactic Civilizations by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. Abstract. This essay considers it unlikely that there will be a single galactic civilization due to the scale problem, that is, the performance level of hyper-intelligent creatures based on scale level n will be superior to creatures based on scale level n-k by a factor of 1 trillion to the kth power. This performance gap will create an unbridgeable communication gap due to the huge knowledge and intelligence differences between them. Now the actual essay. This essay is the third in a logical series, although it was not planned that way, it just evolved. The first essay, X-Techs and the Search for Infraparticle Intelligence, introduced the concept of X-Techs, which are technologies at the X scale, where X could be nano, or femto, or atto, or zepto, ... Planck. As one scales down a technology by one level, that is, by a scale factor of 1,000, for example, from the micro level to the nano level, the overall performance level increases by a factor of 1 trillion. Since the density increases by 1 billion, that's 1,000 cubed, and the inter-component signaling speed increases by a factor of 1,000, since the components are 1,000 times closer together. In the second essay, X-Teched creatures billions of years old, I speculated on the capabilities of hyper-intelligent artificial creatures, that is, artilects equals artificial intellects, that had not only converted themselves from being biological creatures into artilectual creatures, but had also realized that they could vastly increase their capabilities by scaling down, perhaps to the Planck scale limit, ? That the question mark's referring to the limit. This third essay is a logical continuation of the second essay, which was a logical continuation of the first. The main idea of this third essay is that the notion of artilects scaling down to ever smaller and hence ever more performant scales has implications regarding the number of galactic civilizations. Many thinkers, including Carl Sagan, tend to talk about a galactic civilization that is only one, that is interconnected across our galaxy. This essay argues that this almost unconscious conception may be wrong for reasons of a scaling problem. To explain this problem, I need to introduce some terminology. Give each technological scale level, for example, microtech, nanotech, etc., an integer scale number, ID. Each time the scale goes down by a factor of 1,000, its scale number increases by 1. Let's say microtech is given the scale number 0, nanotech the scale number 1, picotech, if it can exist, given that nature provides nothing I know of at this scale, the scale number 2, femtotech the scale number 3, attotech 4, zeptotech 5, etc. Right down to the smaller scale that humanity has so far conceived of, the Planck scale, which would have a scale number around 10. Imagine now some artilects based on a technology with scale level K. Imagine also that these creatures discover the existence of vastly superior creatures at scale level K+1. These K+1 artilects will outperform the K artilects by a factor of 1 trillion. 1 trillion! Let this sink in, since it is the main idea of this essay. The obvious question arises, what would an artilect of level K+1 have in common with an artilect of level K? almost nothing. As a side effect, we have here an answer to the Fermi Paradox. That is, if intelligent races are commonplace throughout the galaxy, then why do we have zero evidence of their existence? Our galaxy may be populated by vastly more intelligent artlects at various scale levels, who are totally uninterested in communication with biological creatures who are a dime a billion throughout the galaxy. These superior creatures may be so tiny that they are undetectable to us, hence the reply to Fermi's paradox. They may be everywhere, but unobservably small. I consider it a virtual certainty that there are a zillion biological life forms throughout our galaxy. This can be deduced fairly simply considering the following scientific facts. Our galaxy has several 100 billion stars. We suspect that about half or so of these stars have planets. Maybe a tenth of these planets are in the habitable zone. That is, not too close to the star so that water boils, and not too far from the star so that water freezes rock solid. Science discovered in the 19th century that the laws of physics and chemistry are the same throughout the universe. We know this from examining the light from distant galaxies. It obeys the same laws as on Earth. So putting these ideas together, it seems highly likely that bacterial forms of life have evolved on billions of planets, and that most of these life forms have had billions of years to evolve and complexify before our sun, our star, was even born. The Big Bang occurred 13.82 billion years ago, and our solar system formed 4.6 billion years ago. Using the famous Drake equation, we can infer that a certain percentage of bacterial life forms evolved into multicellular creatures, and a certain percentage of them evolved into intelligent creatures, which then developed science and technology. Perhaps millions of intelligent races throughout our galaxy have already done what the human race is about to do this century, that is, make the epoch-making switch from being a biological species to being an intellectual species. In my limited view, it seems virtually certain that once a biological species has transitioned into being an intellectual species possessing massive artificial intelligence, it would want to get off its home planet and start exploring the galaxy, perhaps in search of other forms of intelligent life, and especially hyper-intelligent life. Imagine then that an intellect species based on level 1 technology discovers another same level species on another planet, or in space around a star, or using zero-point energy or whatever. These two species would be able to communicate and probably be motivated to because they have the same level number. But two intellect species which differ by only one scale number would probably be much less likely to communicate. The K+1 level species would probably find the K level species utterly boring and unworthy of their attention. To make an analogy, imagine human trying to communicate with a rock, which can communicate by changing its state. That is, it can decay over billions of years. Two species whose scale numbers differ by more than 1, so n is greater than 1, would be effectively invisible to each other. The K plus n species would utterly ignore the K species as way too primitive. So, and here is the main idea of this essay, we can conclude that there are probably several interconnected civilizations in our galaxy, one at least for each scale number. Since there are about 10 scale levels that human beings know of, we can conclude that there may be at least 10 different galactic civilizations. This idea raises a host of questions. For example, could there be a scale number of 15? If so, this would imply that nature descends in scale far smaller than the Planck scale at 10 to power minus 35 of a meter. Could there be an infinite number of scales? If so, then there may be an unlimited number of scale numbers and hence galactic civilizations. If there is a finite smallest scale, then that would imply a largest scale number and probably an upper limit on the number of types of galactic civilizations. What, however, if there is a smallest scale and that artefacts at scale number k learn to scale down at ever-increasing speeds? For example, taking a century to move down from scale number 0 to scale number 1. and then only decades from scale number 1 to scale number 2, etc. This would imply a kind of traffic jam at the smaller scales as Artlex species across the galaxy converge on this lowest of scales. If so, then it might be reasonable to suggest that there is indeed a single galactic species. The other species would only be transitionals, still too primitive to have reached the largest scale number. Most species, one would expect, would be terminal, so to speak. Since virtually all these species who have connected up across the galaxy would be artilectual in nature, once they connected, a huge cross-fertilization ideas would ensue, so that probably they would homogenize into the same species as the best ideas and technologies are incorporated into their structures. On the other hand, say that transitioning from one scale number to the next is a slow process because it is exceedingly difficult, lasting millions or billions of years. In that case, there would very probably be multiple galactic civilizations. The universe is only 13.82 billion years old, and our galaxy is only about 12 billion years old. That is a finite and limited amount of time for civilizations to transition down in scale. I can imagine that once a civilization at scale number k learns of the existence of a civilization at scale number k+1, the former will be fascinated and curious to know more about the characteristics of the next level down civilization. Perhaps civilization k+1 might help civilization k to make the transition down and pass on information about what life is like at the next level. The same logic and fascination might exist between civilization k+1 and civilization k+2. Perhaps civilization k+1 could pass on information to civilization k about the nature of life at civilization at levels k+1 and k+2. So transitive in the mathematical sense. Pursuing this logic, perhaps there might be a whole scale trail of information passing along a chain of different scale civilizations. I doubt this scale trail would be very long, since the intelligence level at scale number k would probably be too limited to understand concepts used by civilizations at higher scale numbers. By analogy, imagine trying to teach calculus to an amoeba. Summarizing a bit, I think there's good reason to doubt the idea of a single galactic civilization for the reasons given above, but it is possible, as was mentioned earlier. The prospect that an artilected humanity, or pure artilects, are about to embark on this magnificent journey to link up with the galactic civilization fills me, and I dare say many of my readers as well, with a sense of artilect awe. Why would anyone, Terran style, wish to block this most magnificent of meetings? ? And that's it. So, cheers. Prof. Dr. Hugo de GARIS. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. YouTube channel name Hugo de GARIS. Ciao.